Do you know what a tongue beetle and a Cold War CIA agent have in common? Both are experts in handling things covered in, well, poop. From dumpster diving to retrieving items covered in human feces. These were some of the shenanigans the Western spies were up to. And if you think that is weird, well buddy, we just have scratched the surface of this bizarre and yet claimed to be one of the most successful spy operations of the Cold War, named Operation Tamarisk. But I hear you asking, why were they stealing items covered in human feces? Well, before we get to know the why, let's learn the how. How they got in. It all started under the guise of BRIXMIS and their American and French counterparts during the period of 1970s and 1980s. According to BRIXMIS, officers from both the Western side and their Soviet counterparts were allowed to observe the military movements in the occupied territories of Germany. This arrangement of cross-surveillance might seem simple and innocent at first glance, but it would be very naive of you to think that the intelligence agencies won't take advantage of this golden opportunity. Basically, this created a way for them to spy on each other, a decision I'm sure both sides knew won't backfire. Although some areas around military installations were prohibited to be entered and would have a sign similar to this denoting the boundaries. Anyone caught snooping in these areas would face dire consequences. But since the operatives had pledged to obey by the rules set forth, none of them ever snooped around and they lived happily ever after. The spies had to play clever and do their shady work under the noses of the Soviet forces who were monitoring their every minute movements. Initially, the spies would search for the areas nearby the military installations and found minimal success when some would notice that the nearby military barracks had dumpsters filled with documents covered in human shit. What? Why were the documents covered in shit? Well, but for that, let me walk you through the reality of life on the east side of the Iron Curtain. No matter how good things would look on the outside, Soviet Russia was in shambles throughout the Cold War, much like its modern counterpart now. Basic amenities were in short supply, which should not come to anyone's surprise as people were desperately trying to flee the ye old communist lifestyle. Hence the reason for the creation of the Berlin Wall, by the way. And one such amenity people were low on was toilet paper. Oh no, not that toilet paper crisis. As a result of this, whenever East Germany's sanitary supplies dwindled, Soviet soldiers tended to improvise by moving stacks of military documents from filing cabinets to washer closets. So basically they were using anything they could get their hands on to use as toilet paper. But didn't they just flush the toilet paper? Did they? Nope. The Soviets knew that it would clog the drains if they were to flush these used sheets down the drain, as they were much more thicker than regular toilet paper. Hence they came up with a brilliant idea of installing special bins to hold soiled manuals, tainted code sheets, redacted correspondence, and so on. These were periodically emptied into general trash, and their aromatic contents would eventually make their way to Western intelligence. Upon discovering the cause of these irregular intelligence windfalls, British and US spy agencies began making efforts to disrupt East Germany's supplies of toilet paper from time to time. Now the bizarre findings didn't cease at toilet paper, as during one such mission, one of the operatives had complained about the horrific nature of the tasks they were undertaking, as he had discovered severed limbs in the pile of rubbish. Upon learning this, the command rightly empathized with the predicament of the operatives by asking them to retrieve the limbs so that they could gather more information about the type of treatment the Warsaw Pact could afford and the type of shrapnel that was being used as the Soviet-Afghan war was going on at that time. These were definitely one of the most unusual items the spies had discovered. But why was this the most successful operation during the Cold War? For that, I'll let you make your own judgment based on the intelligence they actually gathered during the operation. Some of the documents they found included a booklet of ciphers and codes current for the time, human limbs with shrapnel wounds that allowed the West to calculate predicted injuries from them, the specifications of Soviet vehicle armor, the strengths and weaknesses of the then current Russian main battle tank, military training guides including combat tactics. Apart from these, under BRIXMIS the following was also gathered. They secretly brought back the engine and radar of a Yak-28 which had crashed into a river in Berlin. They measured the caliber of the then brand new BMP-2 APC by pressing a lunchtime apple into its gun. They also stole the reactive armor from the then brand new T-80 Russian main battle tank for analysis. On the whole, Operation Tamarisk was among the most fruitful intelligence gathering operations of the entire Cold War. Professor Richard Aldrich, a specialist in Cold War intelligence, said the following about the effort. Those used pieces of Russian toilet paper were absolute cold dust in terms of the information they contained. A failure caused by the lack of discipline in the Soviet army and the inability of Soviet Union to provide the basic needs its soldiers and citizens needed. A plague that is also quite evident in modern Russia. Old habits die hard, I guess. And can you really blame the soldiers? Most of them, after all, were just conscripts, trying to fulfill their basic needs that were just forgotten by their superiors and overlooked by the leaders of the Soviet Union. And since we are already on the topic of Soviets, let me tell you all about this unique Soviet fighter that wanted to be a bomber in this video here. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.